Hey, I'm Richard Bey on Richard Bey Talk. Thank you so much for joining me once again. If you're a subscriber, thank you so much for subscribing, and you're going to get this every week. And if you're not a subscriber, you should think about subscribing because you'll never miss an episode, and you don't want to do that. There's a lot of information here you won't hear in other places. There are a lot of opinions, and there are always look backs to the past and shows that I've done in the past that are usually entertaining and informative. We've got one coming up today about comedians who became talk show hosts. And that leads me to my first topic, which is what makes a good talk show host? Now, I spent quite a few years as a television talk show host and then quite a few years as a radio talk show host. I was on WWDB in Philadelphia, WABC in New York, and then WWRL after that, and then on SiriusXM, where I met the producer of this podcast, Albert Reinoso. So what makes a good radio host? I think it comes down to three things: information, entertainment, and personality. Now, there are people who are successful who don't have those three things. In my opinion, they are not good radio talk show hosts. Information, entertainment, personality. Now, I used to think it had to do something with communicating with your voice because, well, radio is a medium that you hear. In fact, right now, you may be listening to this as an audio podcast on Google Podcast or Apple Podcast or Spotify. So, you don't always have to watch it. But there have been people who have had great radio voices who were big successes. Rush Limbaugh. It's the Maharishi. I'm right here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, this is the way it is in America today. You'll hear that voice and you either think it's the great and powerful Oz or the voice of God speaking. And, for whatever else he was, Rush Limbaugh was a tremendous success on American talk radio, and he had a tremendous vocal talent. Michael Jackson, not the guy who did the moonwalk, but there was a British Michael Jackson. He had a different kind of voice, a soothing, erudite, British accented voice. And his voice is probably something like what you would hear on the BBC. But these days, you have one guy who's one of the most successful guys on talk radio, and it sounds like he sucked helium out of a balloon at a birthday party. And he talks faster. He talks faster than an auctioneer. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this happened today, and then that happened today, and then I mean, I can't stand to listen to him, and yet he's very successful. His name is Ben Shapiro. And Hannity, a good portion of the time, sounds like he's reading off of a cheat sheet that he got from, I don't know, some political source. I think on the radio, too, for me, there is a sense of intimacy. You're in the car with somebody. You're in that home with somebody with the radio on. And you have to make a connection with the listener. Now, Garrison Keillor, I think, did that, not so much with his own presentation, but with this idea that you were coming to this, the prairie something that he created, this imaginary radio theater that he created where you would feel welcome. And as much as you may like or dislike him, Bob Grant did that as well, had that connection with his audience. He was brash. He was racist. He was a bully at times. My parents had him on in every bedroom in the house all day long, and Bob and I became friends much later. So whatever you might have thought about his content or its effect on people, he was a talented guy who created that connection with people listening. Now, in terms of interviewing, I think there's nobody better than Marc Maron. Marc Maron has a podcast, an audio podcast, and he has everybody on it. Everybody from Barack Obama to movie stars to country and western stars to to television stars to actors to poets to writers. And when you listen to Marc Maron, and man, I can't figure out how he does it, except that he's a person that seems sincerely interested in the other person. And by the end of the 40 minutes or so that you listen, you really feel like you know that person. And that's very important. Terry Gross, in a different format, is also a good interviewer. Probably Albert says I'm the most over-prepared person in this medium, but I think Terry Gross gives me a run for my money in that. On connection, it's also connection with the audience. Now, if you look at this magazine article, they asked me who were my greatest influences. So if we can have that up there, and I think Jack Paar is up there. Jack Paar, for those of you too young to remember, had a talk show at night, and you knew everything about him. You knew his daughter. You knew he showed vacation videos of where he went. He cried on camera. He looked right into the camera and told you what he felt. And that was a big influence on me. Another one was Arthur Godfrey from the 60s, another guy who was a racist and an anti-Semite. My grandmother loved him. And Arthur Godfrey had such a connection with that audience. When Lipton Tea was his sponsor, he had some on the air and he said, "Hey, Lipton, you're not putting enough chicken into this Lipton tea." And people thought, oh my God, how can he say this on the air about a sponsor? And Lipton loved it. They started to put more chicken, and their sales shot skyward. And like I said, my grandmother would talk every day about what Arthur Godfrey had done that day. On a different level, of course, Oprah made that connection. With her audience. And there's one other person there that you probably are not familiar with, Don Francisco on Sábado Gigante, which is a Latin American show. I used to watch it, even though I couldn't understand the language of what was going on. It was a weekly party where he had pretty girls scantily clad. He had games. He had people telling real stories. He had people winning prizes. And you really felt like you were going to a place of celebration every Saturday night. Sábado Gigante means gigantic, massive Saturday. And he was this sort of, great uncle figure who would go around and hug everybody and congratulate them when they won things. So he did that. Now, when I first started on television, I thought, there's that little red dot. We call it the tally light. And when I looked into it, I said, I never told myself that I was talking to millions of people. I said, I'm talking to one person sitting on their couch or at the kitchen table watching this on TV. And I want to connect with them. So I used to imagine I would be talking to my father or talking to my mother or a girlfriend or to Kyle. And, after a while, I didn't really even have to do that because I could understand how to reach you through the camera. Hopefully. Maybe I'm giving myself too much of a pat on the back. Now, there came a time when the people who made talk shows thought it was a great idea to snatch comedians from their stand-up stage and make them talk show hosts. I didn't think this was such a great idea. A comedian, a talk show stand-up comedian who's up there, in some ways is manipulating the audience, but is apart from them. In some ways, they have even an antagonistic relationship, some of these comedians. And, Probably I've left out the greatest talk show host of all time because he was more than that, Johnny Carson. And when Jay Leno replaced him, Jay Leno seemed like a nice guy. He was funny, but he could never be Johnny Carson. And Johnny Carson, I got to tell you, he's just quick. He was witty. He was connected. He was spontaneous. He played different characters, which is something that I took over to the Richard Bey Show. But he had a talent that was unique. So they thought Jay Leno's a stand-up. He'll be the next Johnny Carson. He was good, but he wasn't. And Joe Piscopo is now a political talk show host on WOR in New York City every morning. I had both of these comedians on my show at one time, a long, long time ago. And right now I'm going to share that clip with you of their appearance on People Are Talking. Both of them, I believe, were in Philadelphia. Take a look at this.
I always enjoyed the work. I always liked doing what I do.
Did you always want to be a comedian?
Well, not when I was a little kid. I didn't wake up like some divine right of kings and I should be a comedian. I mean, I came from New England, so you're as far away from show business. I came from the kind of town where if you had a friend who knew a guy who had a friend who went out with Sandra Dee's cousin, well, you were in show business. You knew a guy. Well, you knew a guy who had been in a commercial once. Well, that's pretty important. It's just different. So I always thought I would be a salesman like my dad and tell jokes and, just like that, be a gregarious sort of guy.
Were you a funny kid? Were you the class clown or anything?
Yeah, but when you're, flushing tennis balls down the toilet and locking dogs in lockers, that's not a career move, Teachers don't pull you aside, Oh, when you put my eye out with that paper thing there, I almost thought you'd be a comedian. It doesn't quite work that way.
Didn't your father was a salesman? My father was a salesman, too. Did your father take you aside, though, and say, Jay, standing up on a stage, being a comedian, that's not a grown man's profession.
Your dad's voice you're doing now. Is that how your dad talks?
Yes, I've got these encyclopedias here. They're 1999.
My parents are always fine. Once you finish school, you can do whatever you just get that degree. I could be a criminal.
What's your degree in?
Oh, I have some silly degree. Speech therapy. My mother still has hopes that I'll go back to this. I will somehow decide to teach. But they were always, my parents were always very supportive. If I was a criminal, my mom would be there with a soup once a week. I just take this. So it really makes no difference. They get a big kick out of it, but they don't understand really how the business.
Do they laugh at your jokes?
Yeah, I guess but my mom just sits with that. She doesn't understand it. She doesn't understand what are they laughing at? My mother will sit there and stare. She really doesn't know what's going on, but they kind of understand. Now they understand a little bit more, but they don't. I would when I was first in California, I would make up stories, I would call and say, oh, Mom, I'm working in Las Vegas. I'm working with the Beatles, Gregory Peck, Marlon Brando. I'm getting $10,000 a week. And she'd say, but that's not every week, is it? It's not every week, Mom. It's only 2 weeks now. What are you going to do the rest of it? Well, all right, Mom, I'll get another. I just make up things to keep her. But they understand now. They have a good time. They come out to California and they, I knew I was in show business when I introduced my mother to Peter Marshall. My mother's favorite, because Mom, this is De Niro, Meryl Streep. Oh, she doesn't know any of those people. Peter Marshall. Oh, Peter Marshall. Oh. When she met Peter Marshall, I knew I was in show business.
Mrs. Leno, your son has made it. When we come back, we're going to take some audience questions and some questions for Jay Leno about his life and about comedy. So stay with us. Be right back.
I was on a station called WBUD in Trenton, New Jersey. It was the world's worst radio station.
Rock and roll?
Yeah, we played rock and roll. And I worked there, I can't believe I worked there 7 months because I just came out of college. I had no job and I said, well, I guess I'll go there because I wanted to stay in New Jersey. And it was like the armpit of the world. Not Trenton, the station. No, Trenton is a very nice, what Trenton takes, the world makes, takes, whatever it is. That bridge with that little sign that lights up. Very attractive, Trenton. And I couldn't believe I worked on that station.
Would you do one of these things?
Yeah.
Good morning. This is Joe Piscopo.
I actually used the name Joe St. John, I think. Pretty hip guy, huh? Here's a quick impression, ladies. Remember that show, Lost in Space? Remember that? Danger! Danger!
I mean, you call that an impression, but you don't call your impressions, you call them appreciations.
Yeah.
Why do you do that?
Characterizations, I guess. I don't know, because an impression is always the guy that goes, Adele, Humphrey Bogart, you know, and turns around like that. You know, I know I never liked those guys. I never felt like I was one of those guys. So I just like to think of them. I don't know, I just do my idea of the character, you know, like my idea of Frank Sinatra or Jerry Lewis.
Where do you start? Like Laurence Olivier says, he gets the nose first. If he could see the character's nose, then he's got the whole character.
Did you say that?
That's what Laurence Olivier said. He didn't say it to me.
I like that. You're using Olivier as a reference. I like that.
That's right. Somebody in the same mode. But if you're doing Frank Sinatra or Springsteen or Tom Snyder, what do you get first? Do you go for the physical first? Do you go for the voice first?
Yeah, pretty much a physical thing. I watch the videotapes, you know. I just watch. I watch the whole persona of the character, you know, on television. So like Andy Rooney, I'll never forget. I have to use Rooney as a reference because when I was like the first guy to do him on Saturday Night Live before he really like kind of caught on. So I would watch Andy Rooney after 60 minutes, the end of 60 minutes, and I just watched this whole guy talking like a complete maniac with that annoying voice. And his whole persona came out of the television set. And I thought, I gotta do this guy. And he just kind of captured. But then I studied the tapes, and let me tell you something. Listening to Andy Rooney for like hours at a time is very annoying. It's bad enough 1 minute at the end of 60 minutes.
How about Frank Sinatra? Where did you start with your...
That was hard, because somebody... You know who talked me to Frank Sinatra? Did you watch Saturday Night Live this last year? This is NBC here, right?
Yeah. You can mention other shows here, though. We're all adults. We can say ABC, CBS. We can't watch it, but we can say it.
So the guy that was... Remember the gay guy on Saturday Night Live last year, Terry Sweeney?
Yeah.
He was a writer when Eddie and I were on the show early on, and Terry'd be, oh, I have a sketch for you, you know? He's like that in person, this guy, Terry Sweeney, you know? I couldn't believe it, and I said, well, what is it, Terry? He goes, I'm not too sure about my manhood, you know, I just kind of step back. And he goes, oh, you gotta do Frank Sinatra, I know you like him, you gotta do it. And he wrote me this sketch that had, ironically enough, Nancy Reagan in it, and he ended up playing last year. So he had me do something. I said, I can't do Frank Sinatra, I admire the guy too much. And so they said, the mandate came down from Dick Ebersol, then the producer, you gotta do Sinatra. So it was out of fear that I had to like, okay, learn it. So I just studied the tapes over and over and over, and just, he's such a hero, Frank Sinatra, to me. They just made sure I did it with the utmost
You must love the
respect.
Kitty Kelly book, huh?
Hey, that really ticked me off. That really did.
We just had her on the show here on Friday.
What a bitch. Can I say that? Oh, man. I'm sorry.
You can say that. This is adult.
I'm sorry.
George Bush's wife said it.
Did she say it?
She
Good.
was
It just bothered me because it was Frank. Again, he's like a big hero to me and everything. And who is this lady? You know what I mean? Who is this lady? She has a lot of nerve. And Frank, well, you know, he's not going to answer back or something like that. You know, it's just like a cheap shot, is what I'm saying.
How did you feel when they wrote the Saturday Night Live book?
Pretty much the same way. People that write those books, you know, they're just making money. It's not fair, you know? So I don't know, I thought it was kind of cheap shot.
Okay, we're going to go back now to talk about Frank Sinatra, though, because we have a clip from one of your specials where you do sing and do, I guess, an appreciation of Frank Sinatra and Bruce Springsteen at the same time. So as you watch this clip, remember, both of these characters are Joe Piscopo, I guess, in a split screen. Let's take a look at that.
Born in the US of A. I really dig this country. I dig Ron, I dig Nancy.
Thank you. Wait a second. Thank you. I know they can do a lot of special effects now in Hollywood and everything, but are those your real muscles, or did you have...
I've been working out.
Can I see this?
Sure.
Oh, my... You won't believe this. Let's get a pretty girl to come out here. Come on. Can you roll up your sleeve? Because this is really...
No, I can't.
Just roll up your sleeve. Come on, Joe.
I don't know. You know, there's like real body. I'm not a real body. I'm not a real body. Come here, woman. I'm like, I have these antiquated values. You know what I mean? I'm part Jake LaMotta and part Phil Donahue. I don't know. So it's kind of, I'm kind of torn, right, guys? You're kind of torn. You don't know what to do. I want to go, hey, get in the kitchen over there and cook. You know, that's part of me. And the other
But you're
part of me,
smarter than that.
Yeah,
you're more sensitive
I
than
can,
that.
so what happened is, so I went through this divorce thing and everything, and then I started dating an actress I'm dating now.
A beautiful lady.
Yeah, she's nice, thank you, and she's great and everything, but you have to be like real understanding and everything. And my Italian in me is going, no, you're supposed to be with me over here, you know, cook the sausage and the peppers over there, and don't answer me back.
Well, they were kind of funny. I don't know if they either one. I mean, Jay Leno certainly, did well. But, and Joe Piscopo is doing okay as a radio talk show host. But I don't think they satisfy all of the characteristics that I've mentioned in this. So maybe I'm wrong. It's just my opinion. I should know something about it, though. Between television and radio, I spent about 25 years in that profession and getting paid for it. Anyway, once again, subscribe to the podcast and tell your friends about it. Pass it on. While you're watching this, I'm probably running around Central Park in New York City because I wanted you to have something to watch while I was away. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next week here on Richard Bey Talk. As always, all my best to you.